speaker. His name is Pastor Ku Yang. He's been a friend of mine for several years because as I grew up in Tulsa, he also lived in Tulsa for the past several years. And he was serving as the English ministry pastor at Tulsa Vietnamese Baptist Church, and he did that for around 6 years. Is that correct? Yes, around 6 years. And so he is relatively new to Texas now. He moved here almost a year ago and is now serving as the English ministry pastor at Arlington Bible Church. If you know Pastor Ku, you know that he is a very competitive person, especially when it comes to sports, both volleyball and football, which you may have seen a couple of weekends ago during Glory Games. But the other thing that Pastor Ku is very passionate about is he's passionate about Jesus. He's passionate about serving the Lord and serving the Lord's people. And not just any people, but a very specific people, and that is the Vietnamese people. Because you might take one look, if you don't know Pastor Ku yet, you might take one look and you would be like, oh yeah, he must be Vietnamese. But he is not. He does not speak Vietnamese. He might enjoy Vietnamese food, but he himself is not Vietnamese. He is Hmong, and so he speaks only English. So if you know Vietnamese, don't try to speak to him in Vietnamese. But at this time, I'd like to invite Pastor Ku, brother, come on up here and share God's word with us this morning.
Don't speak Vietnamese to me. But anyways, before we start, I'd like to just go to God and just focus our hearts towards Him. Heavenly Father, thank you for this time we can gather here. Thank you for being with us in this presence. And I pray that, God, you continue to reveal yourself to us this Sunday morning. And I pray that, God, you be able to soften our hearts and our minds to receive what you have for us, God. I pray your Spirit dwell in us, that you work in us, God, that we come here and preparing our hearts and mind for you. And I pray you be with me as I give your truth, God. I pray that, God, as you work in all of us, that we be able to encourage one another, to be able to bring forth your church that you have called us, God. Let us be an impact to the community around us. Let's take this time for us to grow and sharpen one another. And a time for us to direct our attention towards you, God. And I pray that, God, you let this time and opportunity use it for you, God. I want to lift everyone here to you. I want to pray. Amen. I am very passionate on the football field and the volleyball. You guys, it's kind of funny because I've been a part of the Vietnamese community for about 7 years now. And it's kind of funny because, use this one? Okay, sorry. So it's kind of funny how you guys never really saw me preach before because I'm always screaming in the field, right? Last GG for football, I think I was a little too competitive, and people said I was screaming at my players. So I was like, don't worry. I told my youth that I get competitive. So if I scream at you, it's just on the field. I'm also very passionate when it comes to the Word of God. So if I'm screaming up here, it's because I'm very passionate. But today, Pastor Dan told me to give the message. I was thinking about what to preach about. I asked you, hey, you got a verse or you got a topic or a theme? What should I speak about? And he goes, whatever's on your heart and wherever God's calling you. And I've been praying about this time, and I thought about this message, and I feel like it's very appropriate for us to remind ourselves towards the end of the year that we need to be more consistent with our spiritual life. And today we'll be looking at what the problem is today in a lot of churches, in our personal life is the inconsistency of our spiritual guidance and our spiritual revelation with God. And our time that we spend with God is very inconsistent. So I grew up in a Hmong family. We have a bunch of cultures that's similar to the Vietnamese culture. I don't want to go through all the differences. You want to know later, come back and ask me. We got some pretty cool things that I thought it was normal, but it's not. But I remember one time when I was younger and I had a sore throat. And I went to the store, went to go buy the Tylenol or whatever it is for my sickness, and I was drinking this medicine for about a couple of days, and my sore throat wouldn't go away. So I'm like, I don't know what to do. So I asked my mom, Mom, I have a sore throat. And my mom goes, don't worry, I got you. And she goes upstairs, and then she comes back with this piece of bark. It looked like a piece of bark, okay? She goes, this is Hmong medicine. Boil this, and I guarantee it's going to work. I'm like, Mom, this looks like you just pulled this out of the garden. But anyway, you know what? I trust you, Mom. So I took this piece of bark, brewed it, drank it, and literally the next day, I was good. And I was like, man, Mom, whatever that Hmong medicine was, that was legit. And, right, whatever it is, it worked. Anyways, a few months goes by, I get sick again. So I go, you know what? I'm not going to go to get the regular Tylenol no more, right? I'm going to go get the Hmong medicine. So I go to my Mom, give me the Hmong medicine. She goes, okay. She goes up, gets this different bag of medicine. It's not a tree bark anymore. It's like pills that look like candy. I go, Mom, what happened? Why did it change form? She goes, don't worry. This is the different type of Hmong medicine that's going to work. Okay. I took it. It didn't work. I was like, Mom, this didn't work this time. She goes, that's how Hmong medicine works. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. All right? I'm like, what? So from now on, I'm like, you know what? I can't trust that. I need to see the ingredients of your medicine. How can it work sometimes and sometimes it doesn't work, right? And that's how we treat God, right? Sometimes God works and sometimes God doesn't work. We act and we be very inconsistent with our faith because of this idea that we can pick and choose when God is relevant in our life. The problem with a lot of today's teachings and today's ways of thinking is the inconsistency of spiritual truth, right? We start picking and choosing how to follow God. God is only convenient to us, right? And when we start to pick and choose, we become inconsistent with our doctrines. We become inconsistent with our spiritual life because we're choosing what we want from Him, right? One day we are absent more than we are present, right? Sometimes we go to church when we want to go to church, right? And when we have an excuse to go, we find a way, every excuse to not go. The inconsistency of our presence is absence, right? One day we love God, another day we hate God, right? We want to please God one day, we want to please people another day. And our passion for God turns hot and cold all the time. This inconsistency stunts our growth and stunts the reality of why we still continue to be in this state where growth doesn't happen because we're inconsistently trying to follow God. And that's what today we are going to look at this type of inconsistency and how it leads to destruction. God has become a vending machine. We can choose what we want and all the rest we throw away. When you look at God that way, you will never have a spiritual guide because you always look at God in your own time, in your favor, in your manner. And in that way, you would always put God in a box. And when you put God in a box, you restrict the power that's allowed to be used, right? And I feel like it's kind of crazy because how we look at our spiritual life, if we're actually going to reevaluate it, we are spiritually very unhealthy if we act this way, right? But we allow our brothers and sisters to act this way because we're trying to be, nice, or we're trying to paint a picture that God is, more loving. But the truth is, when you only preach about God's love and not about his wrath and all his other aspects of his character, you are now worshiping an idol. You are not worshiping the true God. And that's the problem with today's Christianity and today's church. We hold our pastors and our leaders to this high standard of consistency, but we don't hold ourselves to that same consistency. Imagine, right, if I just, you know what, today I'm not going to show up. You know what? As a pastor, we're going to have no service today, right? Just imagine that. You're going to look at me and go, that guy needs to, that pastor's not good, right? He needs to work on his attendance, right? And what if I'm like, you know what, today we're not going to pray today, okay? We're just going to eat right away, right? We're just going to eat, no praying, right? You can look at, hey, why is this guy not consistent, right? You're going to question my practices, my spiritual life. But we do that all the time individually, but we hold that standards to those above us, and that's the problem. You're not the exception. You're not going to go to heaven one day and say, well, God, because I wasn't the pastor, I wasn't a leader, those standards doesn't apply to me, right? No, those standards still apply to you top to bottom. We have a situation here in Galatians where someone was pretty inconsistent and was called out. In Galatians chapter 2, verses 11 through 14, we have a story where Paul here is talking to Peter. This is also an account of what happens when you are inconsistent. Galatians chapter 2, verses 11 through 14. I'll read it to you guys. When Cephas came to Antioch, I opposed him to his face because he stood condemned. For before certain men came from James, he used to eat with the Gentiles. But when they arrived, he began to draw back and separate himself from the Gentiles because he was afraid of those who belonged to the circumcised group. The other Jews joined in his hypocrisy, so that by their hypocrisy, even Barnabas was led astray. When I saw that you were not acting in line with the truth of the gospel, I said to Cephas in front of them all, you are a Jew, yet you live like a Gentile and not like a Jew. How is it then that you force Gentiles to follow Jewish customs? So here, Galatians is one of the earlier letters, the first letter that Paul writes to the church of Galatia. And he's basically right after the in Acts chapter 10. This is where Paul is still going through. Paul just chapter 9 in Acts. He's converted. He spends some time and he reports back to Jerusalem. And this during Galatians, he's writing about this account of what happened when he went back to Jerusalem. And he saw Peter, right? They teach about this justification or salvation through faith and not by the law, right? We're not following through the Mosaic laws anymore. We don't have to follow the Jewish customs of circumcisions, right? And all the Jewish customs. We don't have to do that anymore because we are saved by grace, by faith, not by law, right? Not through the Mosaic laws. So that's what Peter preached about. So when Peter was hanging out with the Gentiles, he will hang out with them, right? Eat with them, fellowship with them. But when he saw the Jewish people come in, right, the Jewish that were believers of Christ, he then pulled back. He pulled back because he was scared of what they're going to say, right? And this idea that justification through faith that what he preached about, he totally is then, because of his drawback to pulling back of not following what he preached, he is then a hypocrite, right? And this inconsistency of him not following, Peter not following that, Paul calls him out on it. And not only does Peter does this, he does lead other astray, even Barnabas, right? So you can see that, right, in verse 14. You are a Jew, yet you live like a Gentile and not like a Jew. How is it then that you force Gentiles to follow the Jewish customs, right? So during that time, they believed that the Gentiles had to get circumcised and follow the Jewish traditions to be a Christian. And then Paul dismantles that argument and said, no, you don't need to be circumcised, right? You don't need to be physically circumcised or follow Jewish customs to be saved. You just have to believe in the gospel, right? And that's the new covenant that Jesus brings forth to the church. So how then are you going to preach that message and then require them to go through the Jewish customs? You are then being a hypocrite. You're being inconsistent to your teachings. And a lot of times we become inconsistent. What does inconsistency brings to our faith and to our church and to our families? I always say there's 3 types of people in the church. There's the believers, the non-believers, and the make-believers, right? And these make-believers are infiltrating the church, disguising themselves because they are inconsistent of not understanding where they stand firm in, right? The inconsistency of these Christians can lead or ruin the batch, the whole church, the whole batch, guys. Our inconsistency can cause others to reject Christ. As you can see here in verse 13, the Jews joined in his hypocrisy, and so that by his hypocrisy, even Barnabas was led astray. One of the leaders was led astray. That's what happened when you were inconsistent with your faith. You lead others astray. That's why there's so much crazy teachings out there. You just go on social media and you watch some of these crazy progressive teachings, and you're like, there's no way someone believes that, right? And you'd be surprised that they got a very big following because everyone is leading everyone astray. When you have inconsistent teaching, you can never, when someone questions your faith, you're going to always never have a true, solid foundation answer. You're always gray. When you're always gray, there's really no truth, okay? Truth is not gray. It's black and white. If truth is gray, that's an opinion, okay? It's subjective, right? And that's what happens when we create this hypocrisy in the church. Right? We think that we are free from sin as long as we're not hypocrites. The truth is, we often tell ourselves, I know I am not perfect, right? That's the Christian motto, right? I know I'm not perfect, but at least I'm not a hypocrite, right? At least I'm not a hypocrite to my imperfection, right? That's the wrong way to look at it. I'm going to give you an example of this. There were 2 robbers. One, when they robbed the bank, one of the robbers had a ski mask, and the other one didn't, right? And as they robbed this bank, these 2 guys got caught. As these 2 guys got caught, they were in front of the judge. And the guy without the ski mask would say, hey, I know I was wrong, but I didn't cover myself up. I exposed myself because I didn't want to be a hypocrite. They both got the same sentence, okay? It doesn't matter. If you are hypocrite or not, sin is sin regardless, right? God's not going to be like, well, yeah, you weren't hypocrite about it, so we'll be more lenient with you. No, right? It's the same thing. So what makes us inconsistent? What makes us consistent? And I'm just going to focus on one thing because I can go through a whole list. I can go through a whole series of this, of what makes us inconsistent. But I'm going to go through one thing. People always ask me, what's the biggest issue in today's churches? What's the biggest issue with the young people? Right? I've been working in youth ministry for about 7, 8 years now, and people always ask me this question. Is it because, we need to be more flashy, more ministry? Do we need to have more programs? Do we need to do more things for the youth or the English ministry? Do we need to find a bridge, right? Do we need to gap the young and the old, right? What should we do? What we're lacking that we can't connect with the young people? Or vice versa, what are we lacking that we as a church is not full, we're not going to the next level? I have come to a simple answer for this question. The problem in today's church is people just don't know God. That's the root of everything. They just don't know God. You can do all the flashy stuff and get them to come here and fill each seat here. This room can be filled, but if they don't know God, it's meaningless. And that's the problem with today's Christianity, and that's been a problem all throughout mankind. You just don't know God. When you don't know God, it becomes very evident in your faith, in your actions, in your behavior. Let me give you an example of the power of knowledge, okay? How many of you guys like shopping? Okay, I do like shopping. I don't go. Black Friday was literally the other corner. I used to work at Best Buy, so I know how crazy Black Friday is. So it's not as crazy no more. but because of online shopping, but it's crazy, okay? You don't get those mobs like you used to get, okay? I was working during those times when the mobs were existence, okay? Back in the early 2010, when the mobs were crazy. I was working at Best Buy, I was home theater, and people would line up Tuesday night, okay? That's how crazy people would be lining up. But anyways, those who like shopping, right? Have you ever shopped for anything that you didn't know anything about? Have you ever shopped for something that you didn't know anything about it, right? How does that make you feel when you shop for something you didn't know? Right, you're pretty much like defenseless, okay, guys? So let me give you an example of this. One time I was walking the mall, it was during COVID, 2020. It was empty. And I was walking, it was during this time, I was looking for holidays, gifts. And I walked past this like skincare thing. And one of the guys, he saw me, goes, "Hey, come here." I'm like, "Oh, what's up, man?" Obviously, I get baited really easily. So I'm okay. He's like, "Dude, you look really good." Funny thing is, I was wearing a mask, so I'm like, whatever. But I heard he looked good, so I'm like, "Hey, yeah, I like this guy." And so he's like, "Hey, come in here." So I went in there. He goes, "Do you do skincare stuff?" I'm like, "Nah, I don't really do skincare stuff." He's like, "Well, you should, because you look good. And if you do skincare stuff, you look even better." So I'm like, okay. So let me show you some stuff. So I went there. He started showing me some of his skincare stuff. He showed up this bottle. He rubbed it on my hand, and like, I don't know what it was, but some of the dead skin started coming off, right? You know, like that dead skin. He goes, "See, that's how much dead skin you have on your skin. You get rid of that on your face, dude, you look even better." And I go, "Dang." And it was coming off my hand, so I got baited. I was like, "Dude, this stuff actually works. Imagine this was on my face," right? So he was showing me all the products. I know nothing about skincare, by the way, okay, guys? So he goes, "Oh, right, so this is the only thing I need?" He goes, No. You need other things too." So okay. So he then goes and he showed me all these products, right? And I'm like, "Dude, that's a lot of stuff." So I'm like, that's crazy, right? But anyways, I'm like, "You know what? I got suckered in already, and I don't want. I've been here for about 30 minutes. I don't want to look like I wasted this guy's time. You know what?" So I go, "I'm gonna buy this." So I go up to the cash register, and he rings everything up. He goes, "Sir, the total is $800. I go, "For 3 bottles of fake skincare?" Right? And it was the little bottles too. And he goes, "You know what though? I got you a deal." What? A deal? For you, I got you. For all this, it's originally $800 right here. But because it's you and I'm going to figure this thing out for you, it's $400. I go, "Man, 50% off? That's a steal, man." So I was like, "So you're telling me that I'm getting 50% off on this?" It was $800, so it's $400. And the product looked like legit. So I bought it. So I scanned my card. I'm like, "You know what?" I felt happy. Took away with that. I'm like, "Dang, I can't believe I saved $400. And I went back, and I used it, and yeah, my sister yelled at me because she goes, "You're dumb, because you could have got that for a lot cheaper." And like, I didn't know what I was buying. The guy got me in, I just bought it. And she was like, "Yeah, you're dumb." So she's like, "From now on, just tell me and I'll buy it for you." And I'm like, "See, I need people like you who knows it, so I don't get scammed like that." Honestly, it was so expensive that I barely used it because I was scared to use it, you know? So I still have it today, and that was 4 years ago. I don't know if it's still good. I don't know if skincare product goes out, like the due date on it, but I still have it because I don't want to use it because I spent so much money on it. So anyways, that's what happens, right? You get scammed, right? If you don't know what you're buying, you get scammed. But what happens if you buy something that you do know about it, right? So I'm an expert. I used to work at TVs, so I'm an expert at TVs. And when I go into the store and I want to go buy my first TV, the guy try to like sell me like these crazy stuff. And I'm like, nah, man. I know my stuff, okay? So I want this model, this spec, at this size. Okay, I don't need to go and look at all the different models, okay? Because I know what I want, because I know what I'm buying, right? And when you do that, I know the price that I should pay for it, right? I'm not going to get conned by the sale price, right? I'm not going to get tricked into the sale price because I know that this is the price that's good for it. Because I did my research. I know my information. I know what I'm buying. And when someone tries to scam me or someone tries to upscale me, I'm not going to fall for it. And a lot of times we as Christians get scammed by false teachings because we don't know God. Because if we truly know God, everything else is a scam. Everything, you can spot that from a mile away. You can filter the true message and the false message, the true teachings and the real teachings. But because we're so inconsistent with our knowledge and we don't know God, we get drifted and pushed all from left and right and not understanding what we stand on our foundation in Christ, right? We are like the shopper who doesn't know God or doesn't know what the item is, and we get scammed. In the same way, knowledge is key. It is what we are it's what we practice. You can't practice something you do not know, okay, guys? You got to know it first, right? Knowing about something gives you the sense of control, a sense of understanding. The more you know, the best way for you to then understand your position, right? How does that apply to us as Christians? The more you know God, the more you love God. And God is made known to you. The more you know God, your insight of truth is made more clear, okay? We have that applied in 1 Corinthians chapter 8 verses, 1 Corinthians chapter 8. I'm going to go through what Paul talks about in 1 Corinthians. I'm going to read through verses 1 through 2. Now about food sacrifices to idols, we know that we all possess knowledge, but knowledge puffs up while love builds up. Those who think they know something do not know, yet knows as they ought to know. But whoever loves God is known by God. Okay? So here in Corinthians, Paul is instructing the Corinthians how to kind of conduct when it comes to food sacrifices or food, right? Because in Corinthians, in chapter 7, verse 8, Paul talks about these behaviors and these rules that, not the rule, but these behaviors that they need to correct, okay? He dealt with marriage and singleness in chapter 7, and now Paul is addressing in chapter 8 the worship or the food offering or food sacrifices, okay? And he's trying to explain to them the importance of knowledge of understanding the food sacrifices, okay? And here, he then is going to explain what they need to do. Because in Corinthians, when Paul is writing Corinthians, the message statement or the theme of Corinthians is that correct behavior in the local church is essential for the development and building of the body of Christ. Okay? That to correct behavior is essential for the development of the local church, okay, guys? That our behavior in our church, our consistent behavior at church helps develop the growth of the church, okay? That's the theme of Corinthians. So he goes through it goes through different things that the Corinthians were struggling through, like the disunity, the marriage, and then the sexual immorality, and the separation of following certain leaders. And then here he comes to food sacrifice. And he tried to explain what the importance is. And here he goes, brings up this idea that knowledge puffs up, right? But love builds up. So he's going to explain this, okay? This is how I'm going to quickly explain this. He understands that first, before you want to get this knowledge, you have to attain the knowledge through love, okay? We don't gain knowledge for ourselves, okay? We gain knowledge to build one another up. That's the root of the knowledge, okay? So he brings that out first. Before he even explains anything else, he wants to explain that what I'm telling you is not for you to go puff yourself up and say, hey, look what I'm doing it right. He's trying to say, I'm going to tell you this thing so you know, so that you can build your fellow brothers and sisters up in consistency of what we're trying to do here. And that's the purpose of why we as Christians work together, right? We come to church because it's not solely for our individual needs. I think that's the problem today's churches. Like, what do I receive from this? What do I receive from my church? It's what can we do as a group, as a community? How can we build one another up? The purpose of the church is to serve one another. And when you start to think that it serves you, what do I get out of it? You have then lost its true purpose of the church. The church is not here for you or self-consumption, okay? It is for you to serve and bring forth encouragement for your brothers and sisters in Christ. How much time do I have? Sorry. I don't want to preach too long. I heard I had 30 minutes. Sorry for a little detour. And you know if I'm going past the time. I'll speed it up. Because I have an illustration of this, okay? And I got 10 minutes. Okay. I'm going to skip the illustration then. So knowledge is often occupied by pride, which is that's what kind of destroys the knowledge, and that's why a lot of us get kind of puffed up. And while knowledge makes people round, love builds up, okay? Knowledge makes the man look big. It's only love that makes the man grow in his full stature. Knowledge here on earth is incomplete, right? No matter what a man thinks about how much he knows, he only knows what's incomplete. He doesn't know what's truly perfect, right? Why do then we boast on what is not perfect? Right? There is no point in priding on oneself on the incompleteness of the knowledge that we know. Knowledge is proud that it has learned so much, but wisdom is humble that it knows no more, right? So this concept that Paul is talking about is understanding that knowledge is not it's important, but it's not as important as love, because love is what builds the foundation of who we are. Love, by contrast, has a permanent effect, right? If anyone thinks he knows something, he knows nothing, right? If anyone loves God, we expect something that he has real knowledge, right? When you truly demonstrate the love of God, you then truly demonstrate your knowledge of understanding the purpose of what God has called you. And it's not the vice versa. It's not the idea that you understand these knowledges that you love. You love because you understand the knowledge. You guys understand that? And a lot of us, we Christians, we try to do that first. We try to gain the knowledge, then love. I'm telling you right now, you don't get knowledge and love, you could be disappointed, okay? I'm going to tell you because I started my master's program, and I learned a lot. But it doesn't build my love for people. I'm telling you now, it gets frustrating sometimes. It gets tiring, and writing the papers, all that knowledge is very hard to obtain sometimes. But it's the love I have for his people that helps me with the knowledge that I am attaining, okay? It's not the other way around. So the consistency is to understand that knowledge is important, but love first, then stems out of knowledge. That's how you truly be consistent with your spiritual life. Everything stems up from the love of God. And if you don't understand the love of God, then you don't have the true knowledge of God. And here Paul then goes and translates this with the idea that the idol worshiping. Let me read it to you guys in verses. Now, about food sacrificed to idol, we know that we've all possessed knowledge, but knowledge builds up. So then, about eating food sacrifices to idol, we know that an idol is nothing at all in the world, and that there is no God but no one. For even if there are so-called gods, whether in heaven or earth, as indeed there are many gods and many lords, yet for us there is to build one God, the Father from whom all things come and from whom we live. And there is one Lord, Jesus Christ, from whom all things came, through whom we live. So here Paul demonstrates the knowledge of the food sacrifices, okay? So he goes and says, so that the eating of food sacrifices to idols, we know that all idols is nothing at all in this world, and that there is no God but one. So when they offer these food sacrifices to other idols, Paul then just says, wherever they're offering it to is basically offering it to nothing, because that idol or God does not exist, okay? So understand that knowledge that whatever they're offering it to, it doesn't exist. There is no dominion and power in that they're offering it to, okay? So in that process, then when you engage and you eat in this food, believe in the heart of understanding that whatever they're offering to is nothing, and that you can partake in what that is. You guys understand what I'm trying to say here, what Paul is trying to say here, okay? So even though there are so-called gods, whether in heaven or earth, right? Yet for us there is one God, the Father from whom all things came and from whom all we live, and there is but one Lord. And we eat because we know that there's one true God that we truly serve. So whatever they're doing is meaningless. The understanding of that. So don't get too caught up in the do's and don'ts. That's what Paul is trying to say, okay? Don't get too caught up and say, hey, should I eat it? Should I not eat it? They didn't know. Because they didn't know, they were like, you know what? I don't want to eat it. And that's the concept of us trying to build these fences when it comes to our Christian life. Oh, we can't do this, can't do that, can't do this, can't do that. And we become really legalistic that way, okay? We become very, very legalistic, and we get puffed up because we're like, hey, look at us. We're not doing this, but look at them. They're doing that. And we start to separate ourselves because we don't know what the true meaning behind the freedom that you are living in. And that's what Paul is trying to say here to the Corinthians, okay? He's saying, hey, guys, know what you're doing first before you even partake in it, okay? Know about these things, okay? And he explains this. And continue on, but not everyone possesses this knowledge. So people who are still accustomed to the idols, that when they eat sacrificial food, they think of it as having been sacrificed to a god, and since their conscience is weak, it is defiled. But food does not bring us near to God. We are no worse if we do not eat, and no better if we do. So Paul then explains, if you eat it, if you do not eat it, it doesn't matter, okay? Because if you understand that what you're eating has no power, it doesn't affect you. But what it could affect you is the brother next to you, okay? So that's what Paul is, the knowledge of Paul. So you're living in freedom, but in that freedom, don't cause your brother to stumble. We know that, right? We as Christians, there are a lot of things that I get so caught up as a pastor. The biggest things that people always ask me is the do's and don'ts. What should I do? Should I do that? Should I do that? Right? And they're always trying to figure out how close they can get to the edge, right? It's like, man, just don't do it, man. I go simple, right? I had one of my guys, he kept asking me about relationship advice. Hey, can I do this? Can I do this? Can I do that? But man, just don't do it, okay? Stop getting as close to the edge as possible. Because even if you are allowed to do it, you're just causing everybody else to follow suit. Because not everyone is going to have the same boundaries as you. Because if someone sees you as closest to edge, right, and your brother is as closest to you, and he decides to take the extra step and he falls, that's on you, right? And it gets kind of in that way when we're trying to get as close as we can because we're trying to justify our actions. We're trying to justify our faith. And that inconsistency of trying to get as close leads us to a path of destruction, okay? Because the closer you get to sin, it's going to creep up at you. It's going to come. You are not an exception to the rule. I always tell people that, okay? As Christians, we are like not the exception. Don't think that, oh, because I'm different, I'm different. I'm not like the older people or the younger people. I can hold my grounds, right? I know I can read the Bible. I do these things, so I'm different. No, you're not, okay? You are not no different person. Only through the grace of God that you are made new. Nothing through our own personal effort can change that, okay? And that's the problem in our inconsistency. So I'm going to wrap this up to you this way, okay? Our inconsistency leads us in a path of hypocrisy. And that path of hypocrisy leads others astray. And we lead others astray, we then become very gray, okay? Because then what happens when we're gray, when truth arrives, our foundation is so weak, okay? Your foundation is built on gray and wishy-washy, left and, we don't know what we're going to go left and right. You're going to get destroyed. The world is going to destroy you because you do not have solid foundation. When you're inconsistent, you're not growing. Okay? One thing about being I used to play a lot of sports. And so GG just happened. This is my last story, sorry. I'm a big storyteller. So GG just happened, and during the time of Glory Games, you guys don't know Glory Games. Those who do know, you guys host it. It's a sport tournament. And my church will always, they don't practice at all the whole year, okay? For me, I practice though, okay? I'm old, so I gotta practice. I gotta train, okay? I'm not like my young self anymore. But anyways, they'll come up to me, like literally 2 months before the game, 2 months before the due of the tournament. They'll go, Pastor Q, I want to train now. I want to be good. I'll go, you know what? Okay, so the first year we play like that, get destroyed. I remember my first year in Glory Games volleyball, I didn't even make it to the A team. I was on the B team, okay? I was in the B team, and we were young guys, and we got destroyed, okay? I think we won one game, okay? And I remember coming home from that, I'm like, we ain't doing that again, okay? So next time, I go, we got to train, okay, guys? Stop thinking that you can train for 2 months before the tournament and become an all-star. That's not how it works, okay? You need to be consistent throughout the year. And that's how you grow. That's how you get better. That's how you truly elevate yourself from one skill level to another, right? You can't just say, okay, last minute now, I'm going to try to get all good as I can within a month or two, and then go out there and play the best of the game you like, right? No, it's the same results. And I tell people all the time, I go, dude, if you're going to think like that all the time, you're never going to get good. So by my second year, I finally made the A team, but we still lost. It wasn't until my third year in volleyball that we took first, right? That was 3 years ago, if you guys didn't remember. Anyways, I go to in that year, that third year, I was tired of losing, so I was like, hey guys, we got to start training. When we're done, like when the year starts, January, we start training for this, right? We need to be consistent, and that's the year that we won. But we got too puffed up and we didn't train anymore. We lost every year. So you see how that backfires you, right? That's our Christian life, guys, okay? We think that we come to church once, go to God once in a while. We think our spiritual life is not growing. We're going to do these things, and we're going to attain some acknowledgement. We're going to change our perspective, our behavior. We're going to focus more. We're going to pray more, right? I need to focus on God more, and we do it for about a month or not even sometimes a day or two. And we get this idea that we can do this once in a while, and God's going to move in us. But the truth is, inconsistency will never work when it comes to God, because the truth is, because you don't value it, okay? If you're inconsistent because you don't value it. That's what it comes down to. So that's my message to you guys. And I pray that God that works in this church to be more consistent for God. Right? Knowledge is power of understanding what love of God has for you. And understanding that, your freedom and understanding that will help you be more consistent with the manifestation of what God has for you. And I promise you guys, when you position yourself in God daily, consistently, He will move and He will work. Let's all stand up. Father in heaven, we gather here. And I pray that God, that we are rooted in your truth. That God, we are understanding what you did for us on that cross, your son Jesus. That it's not just a story that we told, but a story that we truly understand. For the knowledge and wisdom of you, to grasp the salvation that we have received, to understand what your son has done for us. That's the true essence of understanding the gospel. If we don't understand that, then we have then missed the point. It'll be all for nothing. We have done the race for nothing. And I pray that, God, we don't become a church that is just going mindlessly, but a church that understands your truth, who has a foundation, who has consistency, who acknowledges who you are. And I pray that, God, we move with that your Spirit guide us, because we cannot do anything if it's not through the empowerment of your Spirit. We are weak. But God, through you, we are made strong. Through your provision, through your protection, and through your guidance, that we can be able to be led closer to you, God. It is not through our own efforts, but through your grace. And I pray that we become a church that is ready and eager to receive you each and every day. Let us be. And I pray that God, you continue to work in each one of us here. As we exit out through these doors, let us be a walking testimony of your gospel. I'm going to lift everyone here to you. And all God's people say, amen.